Now, greetings, comrades. Welcome again to this our book review, where we start with the reviewing Dr. Eti's book, which is Defeating a Dictator. We've come a long way, and we've traversed various chapters. And the recent chapter that we just finished was on the modus operandi of dictators, the operations of a dictator. We were actually able to learn a lot, their tactics, and it was evidently clear that whatever has been described by the author of the practice of dictators is something that we see even today. You can call it their playbook. But as we ended that chapter, we ended with a very important segment that is going to start for us this chapter. And that chapter ended with the word which I'm trying to look at, which says that eventually dictators always fall. And in this chapter 5, we are going to look at the demise of despotic regime. And we hope we'll take some time to learn how do despotic regimes come to fall? What needs to be done? What does it take? And how does it end? So those are what you're interested to look at in this chapter 5. And as usual, we will be reading. When we finish a subheading, we can share our thoughts on that subheading. Then we can read another subheading. As we say, we are just listening to what the author is writing, but we are independently free to share what we think. So this is not a dogmatic document. It's not a Bible. We can sometimes, at your personal capacity, think differently. Because the fact that we choose to review this book doesn't make that it's a perfect book. But let's hear what the author thinks, and you're free to share your thinking. You're not here to understand, but share your thinking. And that way we can be able to build up and grow in terms of understanding, learning, and preparation. So permit me to once again recognize the presence of all of you from all the corners of the continent you're joining us. And let me ask if there's anybody who is willing to read for us. As I've said, we'll be reading one subtopic, subheading, like this subheading, the inevitable economic collapse. Once you're done, we go around, ask members to share what they think about that text as we move on like that, and like that. So if there's anybody who's willing to read for us, please go ahead. Anybody?
Hello, I could read if that's okay with people.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Right. The title is The Demise of Despotic Regimes. And the chapter starts with a quotation by the Prime Minister of China, Wen Jiabao. Without the guarantee of political system reform, the successes of restructuring the economic system will be lost, and the goal of modernizing cannot be realized. Close quotation. The inevitable economic collapse. A dictatorship is inherently unstable and will eventually collapse under the weight of its own internal contradictions and intrigues, for it violates the natural order of things. Natural law is the body of rules that species must follow in order to live and work in peace and harmony. They must avoid physical harm or damage to another's work and property. They must honor their obligations or contracts with others, and they should compensate those on whom they inflict harm and whose property they damage. When people live and let live, the natural order of the human world or natural law is said to prevail. When people respect that order and the boundaries that define it, they act justly. Justice being nothing more than respecting the order of the human world and recognizing in word and action what belongs to another. Clearly, a dictatorship violates natural law, and anything that violates the natural order eventually becomes extinct. The demise of a despotic regime, however, starts sooner when its economy begins to falter.
Yes, let's start with that. Let's start sharing our thinking with that. So as usual, we'll go around. Anybody want to share something from that chapter?
Sorry, can I just ask for you to scroll so we can see that quotation at the top? The Chinese quotation. Thank you. A bit more? Yes.
Now, what do you think is a very powerful introduction? Sawindok, what do you think about that introduction? Because there's a concept here of natural law that is becoming very clear, that I'll really be interested to hear what you people think about it. Elder Sam, Sister Grace, Sister Tapua, any of you wish to speak, please just unmute yourself and share something.
I could go if there's no one else who wants to.
Yeah, you can start us off.
Right. I'm starting with that quotation there. I don't know why, for some reason, I was taken aback by the goal of modernization cannot be realized. In other words, what this Prime Minister is saying is the goal of any state is to modernize. And in order for modernization to be successful, there's got to be a guarantee of political system reform. In other words, everything is in constant flux. There's got to be change all the time. We've got to be prepared to change political systems in order to advance. And then they say the successes of restructuring the economic system will be lost. In other words, it's very important to restructure the economic systems as we're trying to modernize. So we never quite arrive at any place where we can settle, because there's that need for constant reevaluation and change. That's what I'm getting from there. And
how about the natural law, the paragraph?
Okay. My comment, just to add something to that quotation, my comment, therefore, in the African context is, whilst our liberation, post-colonial liberation organizations seem to think they've arrived, that's a mistake that they're making, because you never quite arrive. Because there's always something else to do in order to better the lives of the people. And then on natural law, for me, natural law is Ubuntu. If you break natural law, if you live and let live, there will always be something that gives. And especially with dictators, if you look at the way they amass wealth and they do all sorts of things, break rules, it always comes back to the natural order of things superseding whatever it is they're going to do, because greed can only go so far and no further. Because when people, there's that sentence there, when people respect that order and the boundaries that define it, they act justly. So it's about justice. It's about looking at our communities and saying, is what's happening in those communities just? And dictatorship is full of injustice. I mean, it's full of injustice from the top to the bottom, and to the point where the economy does not progress anymore. That's when they falter and meet their demise. I'll end there for now.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Sister Ama?
Hi. So I'm going to play devil's advocate. And the first question I think we need to ask ourselves is, what is natural law or the natural order of things? Because historically, right up to the present, there are those in the world who have defined the natural order of things and even use science to so-called define the natural order of things very differently to Ubuntu. So, for instance, white supremacy is based on some people in the world believing that the natural order of things is that people who are white or Caucasian or European are inherently superior to those of us who are African or Asian. They believe that's the natural order of things. So I think maybe if we agree amongst ourselves what we mean by the natural order of things, and I think recognize that not everybody has the same definition of what is the natural order. I have finished.
Thank you. Anybody want to come in?
Yes.
Maybe to also. Yeah, Ella Sam, please go ahead, Ella.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Fusion and the two speakers before. I want to concentrate on the quotation, and I'm raising this aspect because I think the statement seems to be correct, but I think it is open-ended. And if we don't read it carefully, it might even lead us astray, because it doesn't specify what kind of political system that we are guaranteeing and the system that we are reforming. And it doesn't say exactly where this modernization is leading to, because if you take feudalism and then capitalism, those were the changes. But the issue for us is we want to keep going towards dictatorship. And if we do and we leave statements like this open-ended, then we will go in any direction. But I think that is my observation about that statement. In terms of dictatorship, as put, it is very clear that system will always be unstable because it is total control, and it's almost a system that is ruled by fear, and it is disregarding all boundaries of justice and law. And there you will see in those states, the military is always up and about. The military, to have soldiers armed with weapons in a society, it is too ghastly to contemplate. And in South Africa, when the students started demonstrating, we saw soldiers, not police. We saw soldiers being camped even within the boundaries of the schools. And how do you do a study when there's men with rifles? And in those days in South Africa, it was worse. those majority of those soldiers were white soldiers. So already the contradiction, the fear and everything mounts. I'm talking about students, but the same thing was happening wherever, whether it's in the factories, that same system applies. So definitely dictatorship is unstable and it will lead to the disregard of the natural law, and it will definitely bring a quicker fall of that regime or state. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. Now, Elder Sam, on the concept of the quote you raised, now based that this quote is coming from China, can you be able to think about what this quotation is saying to mean? Because what is the political system in China?
Yes, Brother Pigeon, and you know, many people are not aware. Even if we take the previous systems where we said we have the world governed by the Western powers and the Eastern powers. At that stage, it was still Soviet Union and America that we were talking about. And at that stage, everybody was saying we must change from capitalism or imperialism, the Western system, to the communist or socialist direction. But you will realize that even that system, nobody had total control of where it was going, and that's why you will see that China came along, and when China came along, it says to the world, we are a third world country. So they occupied a system where they say they are equated to even the lowest African countries. But if you realize the old modus operandi was to gradually go towards this modernization. And that's where you saw in China, people like Coke America coming in, and you saw the change, and you can see the Tiananmen student uprising that caused students to be shot came around that time when China was saying they are modernizing. And that is why I was saying to us, we need to be sure what this modernization means and where it is going. If you look at the world now, where you have Russia, America, and now China, you check the scope of the activities. Russia is marking America and it's also marking China. They are not two true friends. And the same way, China is marking America and is marking the Soviet Union. So what is happening? Africa, and that is where I want us to concentrate. Africa becomes almost like a playing ground of these three sort of superpowers. And
once
all
again,
what is happening, these superpowers are gaining more from us. We remain in this, what we call not even third world. I don't know what you are talking about. And the empowerment is minimum, but they gain all our resources. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like other members who haven't shared this, Mr. Grace, to come in. But what I'm getting, Elder Sam, on the quote, irrespective of what it implies, it brings the importance of political system. So whether we as Africans want to do any economical things or any development or any modernization, we need to decide on a political system. Because if we don't get it right in the political system we use, economics and everything else will collapse. So to me, I'm getting that irrespective of what system it is, but to us as Africans, if we don't get the right political system, then everything else will just automatically collapse. We can try to change economics, we can try to work on any development, we can try to bring whatever we want to bring, but if there's no guarantee of a proper political system that works for us. And that's what Nkrumah says, and others say that politics and economics goes together. But I think Nkrumah said, seek you first the political kingdom. But others think that seek first the economic kingdom. Others say, seek both together. And it's about what works. But here, I think the emphasis is laid on political system as being a foundation for any progress in a country. Let me hear what Grace, Sister Grace, what do you have to say in regards to this paragraph? I know Sister Tapo is asking what and how do you determine a political system? It depends on what do you want. Because you see, China came up with their own system that they thought could work for them. Call it communalism or whatever. They did not take blindly democracy. Other countries have come up with their so-called socialism that they think can work for them. What do we think as Africans can work for us? Because we also realize that there's no blanket system that works universally. Every society must assess its own progress, its own society, and come up with their own system that respects the societal need, the societal nature, and all elements. For example, even the element of democracy has not been properly working in Africa if you talk about what you say, the winner takes it, or the majority. While in countries where the so-called division in tribal lines, there are tribes that are majority. And those tribes that are majority will always ensure that they vote the majority. And they will always be the leaders in a country. In that process, it becomes even very hard to unite that country. The good example is Kenya. For the last 64 years, all presidents have come from only two communities. And they'll tell you it's because they're the majority in the so-called democracy. What has that led to? It leads to other communities feeling like we should secede and go create our own country as well. And that has led from Somali to Somaliland to whatever, and it's led to Sudan, to South Sudan, to whatever, it's led to Congo, to Central Congo, to whatever. So you see, each society must now start to come up with the system, and you can call it naturally, system that respect the natural order of that society, system that can work for that society. And that system is not universal. Each society, as you said, the China came up with what they call communism. I don't know what it is. They found that could work for their community. And it has sustained them. It has made them move from whatever they wanted to call them, either underdeveloped or whatever you want to call, to where they are today. It serves their interest. The Russians have moved to socialism. It has served them. What can serve us as a people? It's very important. So that, to me, I get that the emphasis is laid on that political system. If you don't get it right there, whatever you try to build on top of it might always just come down, one day or the other. But let me get opportunity to other members who haven't spoken to share their thinking as well. Windhoek, did you speak? Or Sister Grace said that she's working. Sister Myra has spoken. Mama, Windhoek, do you have something to say before we continue reading and continue the discussion? Windhoek? Okay. Let me, Sister Amma?
Scott, sorry, no, continue.
I wanted, first of all, to talk of this natural law. I'm not sure I'm thinking on it, but I think I like what it is. And there are a few things you must get here. The almost second sentence says that natural law is the body of rules that species must follow in order to live and work in peace and harmony. In fact, we are getting the definition of natural law directly from that text. Then the reason why natural law is there is so that people can live and work in two things, peace and harmony. That's very important. And now the rules here, I think, goes to almost the math principle. The rules here are very important, but one must avoid physical harm to one another, either their work and their property. We know what the Western system has done to our society. It didn't respect any natural law in there. We know what even people in government or those who are calling themselves the bourgeoisie do. They don't respect that. And it goes there to say that they must honor their obligations or contracts with others. We know many people don't honor that. They should compensate. And this is very thing to me to the push we have across reparations, where we ask the wives to pay. And I saw a video they are saying as if some of them were saying as we want to take advantage of their taxpayers' money. We want to rob their taxpayers' money if you're demanding that they pay us. But the rule is that if you damage someone's thing, you must compensate the person. Or if you inflict an harm, you must show some level of remorse. That's the principle of natural law. That is the principle of natural law. And it goes clear to say again that when people respect that order, the advantage it is. When you respect that order and boundaries that define it, they act justly, which means justice comes automatically, being nothing more than respecting the order of human world. We know very well that that order, no one respects, especially to so many people don't respect that order of human world. And that's why they say even dictatorship, how they operate is actually contrary to that order. And anything that is contrary, the natural order will eventually makes it extinct. It won't suffice. That's why you see there's a natural, people come out to demonstrate organically, the president is ousted. Some just start to organic because people realize that this is not the order we should live as a society. This is not what is right. So things just get wiped out. But now we are going to get how even that process starts before even the natural order comes in. So Sister Tapua, I see your hand is up. Please come in. As you also, once you finish your thinking, you can also continue reading for us.
Mm-hmm. I'm just summarizing in my own mind, and I think I'm going to do it aloud, that natural law, maybe we could agree. Yes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
Okay. No, I was saying, I'm just going to summarize what I understand as natural law, so that maybe we agree or disagree with it, depending on how you see my summary. So natural law is anything that reinforces justice, anything that supports peace and harmony, avoids physical harm or damage to other people's work or property. And natural law ensures that people pay their obligations and contracts to others. And there should be an element of compensation if things go wrong. So in other words, in natural law, we are saying things might go wrong. We've got to compensate. We're always working on harmony, irrespective of class. There's no class here. There's no this person owns that. Each one of us has a right to peace and harmony, to respect for your work. Ubuntu indicates for us to do. That's my summary. Oh, okay.
Hello, Sister Kapua?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes, I can hear you now. Right.
Now,
The state.
can you kindly read for us? Yes, please.
Yes. The state interventionist behemoths or despots, despite being afflicted with intellectual astigmatism, profess to have vision, often defined in terms of protecting the people, improving the lot of the people, accelerating economic development, launching some new, can you move up please? Some new revolutionary order and pursuing lofty ideals such as justice, equality, and freedom. Despots see the state machinery as a vehicle for achieving their vision, regardless of opposition to it. Thus, the flip side of despotism is the massive state interventionism it engenders. Despots seek total control, economic, social, political, and intellectual. And only the machinery of the state affords them the capacity to attain this. Most find a convenient ally in the ideology of socialism or communism. Hence, the ponderance of leftist despots. Though history provides examples of despots on the right, such as the fascists of the early and mid 20th century, despotism is generally incompatible with capitalism since it precludes heavy state interventionism. To establish their populist credentials, despots may promise to make housing, food, and other essential commodities affordable to the masses through state subsidies. This objective may be achieved by issuing a whole battery of diktats, edicts, state controls, regulations, and legislation to channel economic activity in a certain direction in consonance with their vision, and to transfer huge resources to the state for purposes of development. To enforce these regulations and diktats necessitates the creation of a large number of government ministries and departments. But state interventionism creates its own sets of problems that inhibit or defeat the achievement of the despot's vision. First, state controls end up benefiting the ruling gang of vampire elites and the whole coterie of sycophants and supporters. For the masses, price controls end up making food more expensive. Second, state interventionism results in a bloated bureaucracy and stifling red tape, which provides rich opportunities for rent-seeking, corruption, and bribery. For example, to secure an ordinary permit to put up a house in Mubarak's Egypt required obtaining permits from no fewer than 30 government agencies with overlapping jurisdiction. It is worse for a permit to build a church, which may be refused outright, as is often the case in many Islamic countries, although mosques can be built in secular countries with relative ease. To set up a business in Nigeria, an entrepreneur had to comply with the 1963 Immigration Act, 1964 Indigenization Guidelines, 1968 Companies Decree, 1972 Nigeria's Enterprises Promotion Decree, amended in 1973, 74, and 77, as well as other stifling regulations pertaining to what could be imported, who could be hired, and how much could be repatriated abroad. Frustration in dealing with bureaucracies in the developing world is widespread. Compliance with the multiplicity of regulations is irritating and time-consuming. Tempers flare when applicants and potential investors are endlessly shuttled back and forth between government agencies to obtain permits from senior government officials who, more often than not, are absent on extended lunches with their young mistresses. Frequently, one government department does not know what the others are doing. Processes that should take no more than a few hours may take weeks or even months. The bureaucracy is racked by appalling inefficiency, waste, graft, and administrative ineptitude. To get anything done quickly, it might be necessary to pay a bribe. Thus, the Byzantine maze of state controls and regulations provides lucrative opportunity for self-enrichment. Revenue collection can be diverted, manipulated, or used for illicit gain. Civil servants demand bribes, exploit their positions in government, and manipulate the states to supplement their meager salaries. Almost every government regulation and nuance of policy can be mined. Since every permit has its price, civil servants invent endless new rules and extort bribes. In fact, every official transaction can provide an avenue to amass wealth, leading to poor service and failed government programs. In the Farsi language in Iran, the kickback is called kakwakon. Mohammad Asghari, the proprietor of two medium-sized printing houses in Tehran, complained bitterly, "If I do not pay a success fee for any contract I sign with government organizations, big or small, I'll be out of business very quickly." The success fees range from 10 to 30% of the total value of the contract paid to government officials, which could be as much as $600 a job. Petty corruption is tolerated because it has become a way of life and is necessary to secure contracts, business loans, and even jobs. Corruption now permeates all levels of Venezuelan society. According to Gustavo Coronel, who was a member of the board of directors of Petróleos de Venezuela from 1976 to 1979, and is president of, Abricos Agrupación Pro Calidad de Vida, was the Venezuelan representative to Transparency International from 19 1996 to 2000. Bureaucrats rarely follow existing regulations, and ordinary citizens must pay bribes to accomplish bureaucratic transactions, which are seldom completed. Coronel says that the dramatic rise in corruption under Chavez is ironic, since he came to power largely on an anti-corruption campaign platform. More perniciously, despots and the ruling clique quickly discovered that state controls and instruments are exactly what they need, not only to enrich themselves, but also to punish their rivals, since their critics and reward their supporters. Silence their critics and reward their supporters. For example, import licenses may be denied as a means of punishing businesses associated with the opposition. State controls may also be used to parcel out large chunks of the economy to relatives, kinsmen, cronies, or secretive military groups. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is now believed to control a third of the Iranian economy. You want me to get to price control?
No, thank you. That's too much for us to digest.
Yes.
There were things that I didn't agree with, things that I thought were not right for my side. But let's hear what others think in regards to this. As I've said, this is an author's thinking, which we as intellectuals need to share our thinking on that. So based on whatever has been read, let's hear what others think. Kindly feel free to unmute yourself. Or even raise your hand.
For me, it's the chaos that brings down the dictatorship, because it's almost as if lawlessness prevails. Anyone can do anything they want, collect bribes, do anything, and there are people who are behind this chaos because they want it to continue, because that's how they benefit. And this is why corruption is difficult to overcome. Once it's embedded in a culture, it's crazy, because people will always put obstacles in order to make sure you end up paying bribes. Sad.
Okay. Anybody who want to share their thinking on that text? Is that Grace?
Yeah, it's very sad, this corruption thing. I don't know if it will ever come to an end, or whether it will deepen and deepen and deepen, whether there will be a generation that says, enough, this is wrong. I'm not sure. In my country, it's worse. Every single government service is sold by the officer dealing with it. Somebody leaves their home, come to a government office, sit on the desk. The whole day, all he's doing is selling the government service to us. Anybody who walks through that door must pay for it. It's a free service, but he's charging it openly. And there's nothing the individual can do about it. Anywhere you go to report, they'll just look at you as if, what are you complaining about? What did you expect? You have to pay. That's how things are. It means you don't have any money. So because you're not paying, you're regarded as somebody who don't have money. They don't realize some of us don't pay out of principle. in my mind, I'll say I'd rather do without it than having to pay. But sometimes you're desperate. You look at it as if maybe they're helping you, and that's how they want to make you feel. But literally, free services are being sold by individuals. They've become their private business. And it's not considered as theft. It's not considered as deceit, theft of government property, theft of government information. And because I've heard the word chaos in there, I suppose that's the whole idea, make it look very chaotic. People can't follow up what's going on and what's supposed to happen, or where they should go for what. In my country, you don't even know where to go for what. You just approach that officer. Officer will demand this and that. And in the quantity surveying field, they even have a fixed price. Everywhere you go in Malawi, in any region, the officer will charge you the same amount. So they are colluding. They've got structures of this. This corruption thing has got its own structures and fixed prices for certain services. That doesn't go to the money doesn't go to the government. That's the sad part of it. It never goes to the government. So government is not collecting anything in terms of revenue, taxes, blah, blah, blah. Officers are busy selling it and taking it home. I remember there was a video I saw of a white guy who was crossing Malawi. All these people who bike or just YouTubers or just, he was on a car. So he was stopped by the, what do you call them? You see those people who block the road and they want to check where you're going, your papers and stuff. So they're saying so he's in the car and he's brought out his papers and he wants to grab them all. And the man says, no, I'll give you one at a time. What do you want? So, oh, can I see or whatever? So he hands him one paper. So then he says, come out of the car. He goes, my friend, can you come out of the car? So he comes out of the car. And then he's showing him the back of the car saying, because you're a left-hand driver, you're supposed to have a sign here that says you're left-hand driver. The fact that he's not from that country is not taken into consideration because he doesn't have to put any sign where he comes from with his car. And so the man is saying, oh, so because I haven't got a sign, now you want to take money from me. So he says, no, I'm an agent of the government, so I'm telling you what the rule is. And he says, no, that's not the rule. And you're not supposed to stop me on the side of the road to collect fines. Oh, that's what we do in Malawi. So he says, no. So the guy quotes on his screen what the Malawi law says about collecting money on the spot. He says, no, I want you to give me the bill, the invoice, the receipt, and then the bank account for me to put the money into the government account. He says, no, we don't do that here. So that's the language. We don't do that here. And everybody will say we don't do that here. And you should see the comments in that video from Malawians. Oh, if I was there, I would have just slapped him. Oh, and other people from other different countries. Oh, I could have just trashed him. Oh, just pay. The guy is only doing his job. And they know very well that that money is not going to go anywhere. The money is going to take it home. And the thing he's asking for doesn't even exist. We don't have it in Malawi that says a left-hand driver must put a sign on his car. So the guy says, I'm not paying you until you give me the bank account and the bill and the whatever, so I can go and pay at the finance office. He brings out his tent from the car, pitches by the guy's bench until he's got his papers back and whatever. So in the end, they let him off. So it's those kind of things. It's happened to me as well. And I've said, no, I'm going to pay at the finance office. No, they won't give you the details of the finance office because it's a free service. They cannot charge for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Elder Sam?
Yes, Brother Frederick, and members on the platform. I'm just noticing something from the discussion. I think the author is also showing us something, and I think we need to realize it. You know, if you look at South Africa from, from a periphery, you will not notice that there's a trend towards dictatorship. But if you look internally, what is happening, all what is being described here is happening at a very alarming rate in South Africa. You know, starting from the fact that the ruling party has been the dominant party in the politics, not only of South Africa, but even in the continent. But the political system is there, and this is where the fight starts. To say we will put members of the ruling party in all strategic places, and especially what we call state parastatals. And if you look at it, they have almost all of them collapsed. ESCOM, which used to have energy for all the countries, down flat. SIA, which was flying internationally all over, has even lost, I mean, the bailouts that the government has been using. And those were managed by members of the ruling. So this passage is really stating that we should be able to see through these things. It's not only because there are soldiers marching, as I said earlier, then we will think there is a dictatorship. Every time when there's a case that needs to be sorted out, a commission of inquiry is put in. It takes more money, it takes more days and years to resolve a matter that a decision would have been taken. And this is the bureaucracy they are talking about. And as terms of corruption and bribes, it is, you know, it is gone to a state where even a man who is seeking a job, he starts by asking, is there chocho? Is there something to eat extra out of that system? If there's nothing like that, he does not even accept the job because he will not be able to still do any corruption. Traffic cops on the road, they want what they call tea or cold drink. You know, all these systems is corruption that warrants to us to see that it's not only where we see military or what, but it can also be subtle and it can be seen by all these aspects that he has described. Thanks.
Can I just quickly come in there? Hello?
Yes, Sister Chikomo, come in and we go to Sister Tapua.
Yeah, no, no, I've forgotten what I was going to say. But anyway, in terms of South Africa, in, in terms of South Africa, I've traveled by bus from Malawi, Zimbabwe, South Africa, these big coaches, just to see what goes on. So what happens is, before you get to the border, the driver will say, I'm laughing. The driver will say, each one of you needs to pay blah, 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 blah. And I'll go and give the people at the border so we can travel faster. We can go quickly. So we'll just go through. So we stop before we get to the border. The driver collects this money. When he gets to the border, he hands it over and you go through. The whole bus just goes through. And when you're coming back in South Africa, the same thing. Oh, so we don't stop for them to, because people are going to South Africa to buy, they're buying things to go and sell in Malawi. So they'll say, we need to give them so much money. So they must collect. So I'm saying, but I don't have anything to declare. Why am I even paying? No, but everybody has to pay so the bus can leave early. So I said, I'm not paying. Yeah, so people paid, they give them the whoever they give the money to, I suppose they take their own too. And the bus just cruises. So when South Africans are complaining, oh, people, papers, this is how the buses come in. Because they are not checking anything. You can literally leave Malawi into South Africa without a single paper because nobody's checking anything. They're just, buses are just passing through and people are trafficking people every day. You pay your money in advance and you just go in.
I'm just about to intervene. Rightfully so. There shouldn't be borders.
I know, but then why are you even charging? Do you see? So the border is still there because you're charging.
No, the border is not there. The border
money
is not
the
there.
border. The money has become the border.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a money collecting scheme. This is why some people would want the border to remain there because they're making money out of it.
Exactly. So the migration officers, even all this visa, no visa thing that's now official, immigration officers are still collecting visa money, which means the money is not going to the government, it's theirs.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to add an example of what happened in my home city, Mutare. Because of corruption and because of government not paying or city council not paying its employees, they'd gone on for 2 or 3 years without paying them because of inflation and all sorts of economic problems. When they got a new mayor who happened to be white, the guy came up in full force to clean out corruption, to root it out.
Do you see what I mean?
He was so successful the first few months, things just changed. The city got cleaned. Everybody was on post because the employees were in shock. But once they rallied, they had him fired by the political parties in power because they suddenly said, oh, he's a white man. You know, he can't rule us. He can't do this to us. And yet he's the one who was sorting the place out. They've been so fed up with this guy because he's even gone to the locations, the high density suburbs of Mutare, and he's campaigned there and he's been voted to be a councillor, to be an MP in that area against the ruling party's MPs. And they don't know what to do with this guy because people appreciate that when he's there, they don't pay bribes. They refuse to pay bribes and he begs them out. So it's
That's
really an effort. Yeah.
That's when they kill them off, people like that. They'll find a way of getting rid of them.
Yes.
We've got this new vice president I'm talking about. Because he was a vice president in a how shall I put it? He was the vice president in a government that's the ruling party, but he's not in the ruling party, if you see what I mean. He's got his own party, coming from a different party. President decided to take a vice president from a different political party. So now he too is on the ballot to standing in as a president. So this guy keeps saying, so you see, your countries, for example, South Africa, has had the same political party since independence. In Malawi, the maximum is 10 years. Otherwise, it's 5 years. We're changing every 5 years. But the more we change, the worse things get. Because it's not the president running the country, it's the civil service. So this guy is saying, no, it's the civil service. You're wasting your time with the civil service needs to be sorted out, like the white man did, like Magufuli did, like Boris Johnson did. Otherwise, you can change the president all you want. These people have got a very tight system that nobody can shake at this moment.
No, sisters, permit me to interject and also allow other members to come in. I think you are going to the highest level of what I was trying to suspect from this paragraph. I don't agree with some few things, but there's an element here that a despotic regime is a system. It's not an individual. And there are so many people in that system that benefit. If you can read from here. And the system takes even the ordinary people. Look, for example, what they are saying in Egypt. You are going for 30 government agencies with overlapping jurisdictions, probably. Set up a parastatal on this and this, employ your sister there, set up a parastatal on this and this, employ your cousin there. Government tried, there's been a resistance in Kenya about privatization of government parastatals. And this is where my problem comes with this text. When the author says that an element of trying to nationalize resources or bringing them into a national agency appears to be dictatorship, I think it depends on the motive of the leader. When Traore decided to nationalize natural resources, his intention is to ensure that it's used prudently to serve the interests of the citizens. Of course, there are others who nationalize the resources, and actually it's not nationalization, it's privatization in a nationalization framework, which means the government says that from today moving forward, that mine will be controlled by the government and owned by the government. Then the president appoints his brother to be in charge of that nationalized mining sector. Basically, you have acquired that national agency to private individuals. In Kenya, for example, recently, the president said now that we are going to close parastatals, merge some, and sell some. People brought a lot of issues. But of course, I thought the move was also necessary because some parastatals were having overlapping mandates. So we are having our overlapping mandate. Why don't you come one? So that we reduce those bureaucracies and wastage of national resources that is being passed through different institutions. Because, for example, such institutions have budget, secretaries, directors. So are we not creating more opportunity for people to be employed to loot and create more bureaucracy? But again, what happened? Some of the institutions that were privatized, the same government became the buyers. So the president privatized an institution, then himself through his proxy buy that institution to be a private entity. And that tendency of privatization, the other call it public-private partnership, is taking a trajectory in Africa that we must watch. So the public is the president. The private is himself through his private company. Then it's a partnership. Auction by the government to run a private road in the country that collects money. For example, Kenya here, we build what you call expressway. When President Uhuru was in power, we were told that expressway was built by a company in France. Later, just to realize it was exposed recently, the president, through his proxy, formed a company in France, and then the mother company, which is a white company, came to bid the tender, and even as a president signing the tender, then the execution was left to his company, which is the president of the white people in France, to come do the work. And the money is going to the account in France, which basically is his account indirectly. Now, the element that I also have a problem is when the author tried to say that in capitalism, probably despotism does not exist, and maybe communalism and socialism is what breeds despotism. I still believe that capitalism goes contrary to the natural order, because capitalists don't care anything. It's about profit making and milking of the public resources. So that's where I have a total counter opinion in there. The author, that he tried to bring it that more of despotism might not be compatible with capitalism. I think capitalism can also breed a lot of despotism. and even socialism. I believe socialism and communalism, if controlled properly for the intention of the people, it can serve the people. But yes, there's a danger that such can also be used to serve the interests of the leaders in power. And that's what I think. So more members can also come in. If you have your thinking, please go ahead. The floor is open. Anybody want to come in? Hello? Hello, Sam, Mother Sawindok, Sister Ama. Anybody want to comment on this? Okay, Sister Grace, go ahead.
Mine is a question on this corruption. If we were to end it, how would we go up? How?
I don't purport to have an answer, but aspiring to run a country as a presidential candidate, some of the few things I've been thinking is about systems. Of course, I know systems are controlled by still people. But for example, in Kenya, and we have been able to bypass it, when we came up with the M-Pesa system, to ensure that everything else has to be paid by her. In fact, in some government offices, or even in some businesses, they tell you they don't accept cash. Because when money gets to your mobile, you can account for it and you can produce that evidence. That I paid you 5,000 shillings because this is the message. But when I give you in cash, tomorrow you can say you never got any money from me. I don't have any evidence. We have been paying for, in Kenya, for example, we have a portal called eCitizen. In fact, it was just exposed recently that the money we were paying through eCitizen was actually not ending up in government pockets. But what happened in the eCitizen, when somebody wants a service, for example, a police clearance certificate, what you do in Kenya, you go to the online government portal, key in all your details on your phone or on your laptop. You get a pop-up message for paying. The money is stipulated there, the amount you should pay. You pay that money online, and you only go with a printed copy of what you paid. And you take your fingerprints, and you wait for your good conduct. If that process was to involve physical processes, first of all, accessing the form to fill your details, you'll have to pay money. If you're going to take it, for it to be taken again, you have a long queue. And the moment there's a long queue, people tend to corrupt and bribe. But when you reduce such long queues for services, and when you make services accessible to all easily, people don't think of the limitation or that it is insufficient, they need bribe to get it. When the opportunities and chances to access any service is available easily, nobody thinks to corrupt it so that they can get the service. But when the opportunities to get the service is limited, everybody will pay whatever they have to pay for it. I know in America, and I think in abroad there, when you're driving at the over traffic offense, I'm told you are being, I don't know how they log in and you get your mistake, and you have to clear your bill within a period of time. What happens in Africa? The traffic officer will not tell you your offense. They say stop here, you talk with them, you give them money, and that's it. In some parts, like in Kenya recently, they read for you a receipt to pay or appear in court. But in many countries, they don't do that. Another thing that's very open, in Kenya here, I see police officers from nearby police station walk in each, what you call wine and spirit. Wine and spirit are small shops where they sell alcohol. And they collect 50 shillings every day. Nobody questions why. Nobody knows where that money goes to. They do that in traffic and in police. So when you have systems that enable that people access services, and when you make those services affordable, cheap enough, people might not have to look for shortcuts. It can reduce corruption. One day I sat with Professor Lumumba. You know, Professor Lumumba was heading anti-corruption in Kenya some time back. And I asked him what happened. What he told me was very interesting. He said to me that when he decided to follow people of big things, they're called big fish, he just got a phone call on his way that is the end of his job. So I think systems and putting accountable systems can help reduce corruption, not actually help take away corruption. So where systems are digital or something like that, you reduce human interaction, then you at least reduce the ability of bribing and taking corruption from other individuals. So that's my thinking. Please come in, Sister Grace.
Yeah, I do also think that's the best way to minimize it. But when everybody is corrupt, nobody is willing to put those systems in place. In my country, you will go into a government office. There is not a single computer on the desk. Everything is manual for the same reason. Everybody is seated at the desk collecting. Everything you do is manual. File is missing, so you should pay. This, that. There is, I can't even think of any system that I go in and do it online, except for the M-Pesa business, the one you saying you pay using your little phones. That's why we have these little phones that the ones I say have no WhatsApp on it. Those ones can transfer money. People pay, we pay people through those phones because every single one of them have them. So you pay them, you pay your workers that way and whatever. But I then noticed that there's still corruption within that system. The person will say to you they never received the money. It's not showing in my phone. It's not showing in my phone. And then you say, but it's showing that it's gone from mine. Well, I don't have the phone, so which means I'm paying from a bank to a phone. It's showing in my bank that it's paid a phone. The person is still maintaining that they did not receive. I'm asking my bank, my bank is saying, oh yes, it's gone out, but it's not showing. It's not. I shouldn't be laughing. It's not showing on the other side. There is no way you can go to complain about anything. They'll back it up. Even your own bank will say, yes, it has left, but the other side, we are failing to trace it. And it disappears just like that. It's that deep. Bank to bank, worker to worker, it just carries on like that. So they want you to pay again. I don't know. I really don't know.
Sister Tapua, please come in.
I just want to give an example of what happens when corruption is entrenched in the system and the culture. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have people who have not known any other way of doing business except paying bribes. So when Starlink was introduced here, people were told they could buy from designated resellers or they could buy from the Starlink website. And when you grown up in a corrupt system and something like that comes in, there are people who hoarded Starlink receivers. There are people who will not go to the site where they can buy for a designated amount. And now, because we're in groups that have been formed on WhatsApp, it's humongous. There are people who are approaching agents to pay twice as much because they're so used to corruption. They're so used to not getting anything straight up. And we're telling them, just log on to the website, Starlink website, and buy. And they're asking, does that happen? How do I do that? And I'm going, what do you mean, how do you do that? Because no one believes that anything can be done upfront, straight, without charging anyone. It's that bad. They'll actually think you're about to scam them if you're not charging extra. It's bad. Shocking. Anyway, I'll stop there. Uh-oh. My offline.
Yes, Mr. Tapua. Okay, anybody want to come in on this? We'll end it here. We'll not read more because we have only 14 minutes to go. Or we can just read and then we will not comment on that.
No, we'll be tempted to comment.
Mm-hmm.
You see, this corruption is called success fee.
It's called what?
Success fee.
Oh, I was going to ask Sister Tapua, what is Starlink?
Oh,
I don't
all
even know
right.
what it is. I hear it from that guy. What's his name? Elon
Elon
Musk.
Musk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Internet services are provided either through fiber put into the ground or those aerials, that ridiculous aerials that they put on top of hills to try and network. What Elon Musk has done is he now has satellites circling the earth and providing internet services. So in the rural areas, in the deep down rural areas, you can now get internet from satellite. You don't have to have fiber dug in.
Right.
So, because Zimbabwe has a peculiar system with only just two service providers for internet, when Starlink came in, everyone just wanted Starlink because government can't control it. They have to negotiate with Elon Musk. I don't know whether it's possible or not, but the service is excellent compared to what we were paying the other service providers. So Harare, the capital city, was full in 2 weeks because there is a limitation as to the services that can be provided depending on the satellites that are there. But the smaller cities still have space. The rural areas, you can now have internet in your bag because you can carry the aerial with you. It's mobile. So that's what Starlink is.
Okay.
Now, thank you. I think what Elder Sam said, that sometimes these small activities of corruption, we tend to ignore whether they're despotism, and we don't easily catch on them that they're actually some level of dictatorship. But they're silent acts. Because when you see people asked to pay money, a lot of bribe, what happens to that economy? It comes down. And when it comes down, what happens? The despots also come down. Because there's no way people will be silent when the economy is totally rotten. But sometimes we don't understand, where do the economy start falling down from? What is causing it? And there's some level of bureaucracy that breeds in more corruption, more bribery, affect businesses. If you see, this person could say that they have to pay success fee that range up to 10 to 30% of their total amount. So if you are using 30% of the whatever you're supposed to use to pay for corruption, Will you really execute the job that you're supposed to execute with maximum attention? You won't. So you do a shoddy work. You're given a contract in the village to repair some road, but before you even access that contract, you have to pay the area member of parliament, you paid the area who and who, you paid what and what, you paid what and what. Then you end up being given a contract of 1 million, but because you're paying layers of corruption in between, you end up using 500,000 to do that project. And yet the project was to reach a standard of 1 million. What happened? You do a shoddy work. Then over a period of the time, the road you are repairing with a building, it comes down. People protest, people complain. So I think this is one of the salient issues on how despotism affects economy, and especially through a lot of tail bureaucracy, a lot of ineffective parastatals that have multiple roles. Because, for example, in the trade committee, sometimes we sit I sit in some of the trade committees in the Kenya here, and businessmen are asking, why do you have so many overlapping mandates? In fact, in one of the strategic issues we are going to work on in the next 5 years is what we call harmonization of those regulations or requirements. So in Kenya, for example, there's a body that deals with certification. So they give you a mark of standard. But you have to go through various bodies. And each body you go through as a business person, you pay a lot of money. They get their own certificate. They patch it somewhere. You go to the next body, pay a lot of money, patch it somewhere. You get to the next body, patch it. But the moment you are getting certified, the amount you have used is almost even more than the investment amount you have to put in place. So there's what you are working on, what you call harmonization of standards. So why don't you, all of you regulators, come up with one certificate? Come up with one team that a business person do not have to work various offices. They go to specific body, do the analysis there, and once that analysis is done, it's perfect. And that one you're also trying even to do it with what you call conformity assessment. That if a product is leaving Sudan to Kenya, or Kenya to Zimbabwe, if Kenya body of standards have certified that that product is up to standard of health and safety, that product don't have to land to Zimbabwe to be opened again to be taken through a test of safety and standard. Because the moment you take someone's product into that process, the first of all, they pay money. It's a whole process that takes some time. They lose a lot. So why don't you just ensure that you, in the process, if you, what you call mutual recognition. So if Zimbabwe and Kenya can have an agreement to ensure that they recognize standard made by Kenya and Kenya recognize standard made by Zimbabwe. That means that if a product is leaving Zimbabwe to Kenya, once it lands in Kenya, as long as it's not a standard of Zimbabwe's safety standard, that business person has not to be submitted through various exercise, trial, and experiments again. You allow that product to be in the market. These are the challenges you are facing yourself. Mr. Tapua, please come in. You're having around 6 minutes to go.
Okay. I wanted to just comment on the fact that you were saying some of the people who get contracts do shoddy work. In Zimbabwe, we've now graduated from, what do they call them? They call them tenderpreneurs. Tenderpreneurs, because the government passed a law which acknowledged that Black Zimbabweans do not have the Capitol Hill to apply for tenders. Although they're able to do the work, they can't because they don't have the money. They've got to have a certain amount of money up front. So what they agreed was, if the government, if you've been awarded a tender, the government can pay you before you do the work. Pay you a huge percentage before you do the work to enable you to do the work. So we have a now famous somebody who was given money to start a solar farm or somewhere, and he got a lot of money, did nothing. When people went to check on what had been done, there was nothing. And he turned on them and said, it's because you did not do 1, 2, 3. And he took the government to court, and the government, anyway, it was the government taking itself to court because this guy is standing in the stead of someone else who's in government. They were awarded millions. They were awarded more than the amount they would have been paid for the contract. And he keeps on doing that, coming up with being given this money and never producing the work. It's just sad, very sad. When leadership is actually in it, it's difficult to control it.
In my country, we are now being promised.
Any more comments from any member?
In my country, we're now having new promises, like the new political party is saying, why are we having new promises when we didn't deliver the last promises? What about apologizing for the last promises? If you didn't have the money to do the last promises, where are you going to find these promises? One of the promises being women because the elections are on the 16th of September. So starting from 17th September, anybody who has a child, who has a newborn, will get 500,000 kwacha. But the child will withdraw the money when the child is 18. When the child is 18, the people are saying, will the government be there in 18 years' time? So it's all those lies. So 3 days later, he comes back and he says, no, actually it's 50,000, not 500,000. So all sorts of funny games going on at the moment. It's ridiculous. They just take us for fools, and that's it.
Thank you. Sister Ama, please come in, Sister Ama.
Yeah, I think it would be good to we've got about 4 minutes left now, but to actually have a discussion on corruption, about what corruption is, where it is, because corruption is actually worldwide. It's not just in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Malawi, Ghana, Nigeria, whatever. Somebody mentioned Elon Musk. Well, I would say that Elon Musk is probably right at the top of the corruption pile.
Yeah.
So and earlier on, can't remember, somebody mentioned Kwame Nkrumah about seek ye first the political kingdom. And so part of our discussion has to be around on what type of political kingdom are we seeking? Because certain types of political organization in and of themselves lead to corruption. And as I say, it's worldwide. Somebody earlier on talked about Boris Johnson. Well, I will tell you, Boris Johnson, I live in Britain, and Boris Johnson is corrupt. Apart from the type of corruption you have in the UK is, let me say, it's not as ready and raw. It's a lot more sophisticated, because we had this whole, during coronavirus, government ministers were giving contracts to their neighbours, to their friends, to the person who they drink in the pub with. So it happens here as well. So I just think it would be really useful for us to just kind of like unpick a bit. Now, part of what I think happens in some people in civil service jobs in Africa is that the corruption comes because the salaries that they are paid are not enough to live on. So I could say that with my hand on my heart, with some civil service jobs in Ghana, jobs like teaching, if your salary doesn't pay your your weekly housing, for your monthly housing costs, for instance, then what alternative do you have? And I'm not justifying it, but as I think that there's that aspect to it. Another aspect to it is mindset. And somebody mentioned that, I think it was in Zimbabwe, that you now have a generation of people, young to middle-aged people, who don't actually know anything else. That's what they've grown up with. So that when actually is somebody's trying to do something for them without actually asking, they think that they're being scammed because someone's not asking for money. Because so there's a whole thing about conditioning and mindset, etc. But I do think it would be worth, because corruption hasn't always been there. And also, there are people within our communities and our countries who do not resort to corruption, but they do not get heard. They do not get the attention, etc., etc. So if you go to some of the rural areas in say, for instance, Ghana, my country, people aren't corrupt. So let's maybe unpick it and not just focus on those who are corrupt. Let's look at those who are not corrupt. Let's look at corruption both within our nations but outside of our nations. And then most importantly, the question is, how do we what do you call it? How do we move from corruption to non-corruption? How do we end corruption? How do we stop people being corrupt? Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. I'm also going to have to leave in about 2 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Amma. And I think, if there's anybody who will be willing to do for us a presentation on this, or whether we feel that we should set us aside, as Sister Amma is saying, we can set up the date during these findings and focus on corruption. One of the day, because it's coming out as the tactics here and one of the issues. So if there's anybody who will be willing to do a presentation, please let me know when you are ready so that we can announce it. And we've done that. We've sometimes interjected our Sundays to focus on a topic that is relevant to the book or what we discuss. So yeah, we'll be willing to have that conversation. Yadasan, you'll be the last person, Yadasan.
Okay, brothers and sisters, I just wanted to add, what Sister Tapua said, it's happening rampantly here in South Africa, that people, we have the people we call tenderpreneurs. Even some government entities are now saying they are going to change their system of tenders. Now they will try and train people themselves and then employ them. But it's a confused state of affairs. The situation is that in these types of governance, there's chaos everywhere. And the biggest challenge for us is that the infrastructure in the country collapses because people who must do maintenance, they do shortcuts. If they must use 10 bags of cement, they will use 5 bags, and the 5 goes in another hole disappearing, and so forth. We used to have post offices, and that is why I was talking about this modernization. Now we don't have post offices, so everything delivery is made by a middle courier group. That middle courier group must get protection to get into the township, because in the township, anybody that does not have a job can pounce on it. So you can see, instead of growing, we are diminishing basically, because now that man must employ more people to just get a courier item to a certain destination for safety. And the worst part about this whole thing, all the money that is got in this illicit way ends up getting out of the country illicitly, going to the areas to buy where people are safeguarded and they are safe. But the country goes down the drain. There's no roads, proper maintenance, road sewage is spilling all over. Municipalities cannot handle and cannot account because everybody is doing his little bribery or corruption at any level of the system. So it is a bad system. Situation must be kept. Thanks.
Thank you, comrades. That marks the end of our session today. We'll continue to learn more ways in how dictators fall, including price controls, how it affects them, the subsidies they bring in. We'll go ahead to learn more other tactics. So thank you for your time today. And let's look forward to also that conversation on corruption. Anytime we are ready with that, I'll be able to inform our members. For now, let's end it here and let's meet again next Sunday. Have a blessed evening to you all. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Next week.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good night and thank you, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.